This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And Brandon, we are back. Had a great time. You're actually the only one this week that I've not talked to about this yet, but we had a great time this past weekend. Mark got married. Congratulations. This has just been the congratulations week to Mark, as he's not doing anything for us, as he's enjoying himself in St. Kitts. Well, should be ending his time at St. Kitts sooner, as we're recording this later in the week. But we had some good fun at Mark's wedding last weekend.
Yes, congratulations to Mark, and that's very exciting. Good for you, buddy. We've got about at least 10 years till we have the next one.
Yeah,
and then that one will probably be Sean. He'll just pass up Dave, Ricky, myself, and Johnny. That's okay.
Yeah, that's just the way it goes, though, right?
And who cares?
Yeah.
But yes, Mark's wedding was a ton of fun, and I do want to say, though, we found out who the fun people are in MVP. I already knew it. You may not, but it's Sean and myself, and we're the only ones who went out there and danced. I mean, outside of Mark.
Sean gave me enough shit for that on the onside kick.
Mark was obviously having to do his rounds with people, but he was out there at some point. But Ricky and Dave, two lame ass bumps on a log, sat outside, wouldn't even come in.
I did the Macarena. I did the Macarena, guys. What do you want from me? I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, it was so difficult. No, you get out there.
I don't know. I broke a sweat.
Of course you did. Of course you did. But here's the thing: is that it was a lot of fun. We had a great time. It was always nice being able to get together, especially for one of our buddies and close friends, and see him marry the love of his life and everything, and that's really, really cool, and good for him. I hope they've had a great time.
Well, and the funniest thing from the onside kick too was when I was talking to Sean about it. He said I danced with a girl, so that's what Sean was really proud of at the wedding, that he got to dance with a girl,
as opposed to a man that he probably wouldn't have been as excited about.
No, he wouldn't have. He liked dancing with a girl, but we're gonna get right into it. We're continuing our preview, and everyone's like, "Come on, guys, get to what you're here for." Preview. I think
they enjoyed that.
I hope you did. I mean, I had a great time at the wedding, so I hope you had a great time listening to us talk about the wedding, because I think if I could go back to it, I would. I looked damn good in that suit.
You won't see Ricky ever dress up anywhere near what he wore that night. He actually had to wear real clothes.
Yeah, no, I had to have the vest and a tie, and the only thing I didn't like about the tie was that it was a clip-on, but that's what they give you.
That's the type of tie that Ricky Widmer would wear.
That's what they give you, but I had the nice tux jacket on and pants, but it was nice to wear an actual tux. But we're going to get into, this is a preview, Brandon, that everyone's been asking for, and this is in the comment section. When do you get into the Big
Rutgers?
Ten? When do you get into
Rutgers?
No, the Big Ten exclusively. When do you get into the Big Ten? I'm like, hold your horses. We got to get to the SEC first, but we're finally here, the Big Ten, and we're going to do the Big Ten East first. We'll do the West next week before we move on to the Pac-12, and we're going to start with the bottom feeders of the conference to start off, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. And I think this one's an easy place to go because, as the Drake song goes, and I always quote it, you got to start from the bottom before you can get here. And we're going to start at the bottom here. This is a team that in, 3 years has only won 4 conference games. They didn't win a single Big Ten conference game last year. And I don't know, looking at the schedule, I don't think they are going to win a game this year in the conference. This is a team that is at the bottom, and they got to start winning somehow, some way.
So I'm not going to exactly quote Brad Pitt in Moneyball, but it went something along the lines of, here's the good teams, here's the bad teams, here's the bottom, here's a pile of shit,
and then there's
us. And that's Rutgers. That's Rutgers. I mean, they are not good. They have not been good since coming over to the Big Ten. They have really struggled. And the stat that you said, and just winning 4 conference games is not good at all. And 0-9, last year, and 2-10 overall, 0-9 being in the conference. You take a look at their schedule from last year, and you look at some of the games. Iowa was close. They lost by a touchdown. Minnesota was close. They lost by 2 points, 34-32. Indiana was close. They lost 33-27. Those are games that I think that if we look again for this year, those are games that maybe they could win one of them. Mm-hmm. Maybe they could win one of those. And that's where I kind of wanted to start with Rutgers, is their number one key for me is you have to win one conference game this year. You have to win one conference game this year. And if you do that, you've already done better than last year. That's what I think. And I know their fans are probably hoping for much more than one conference game. I would obviously be hoping for much more than one conference win as well. But I think that you have to, when you're a team like Rutgers, you're not going to go from the worst to boom, putting yourself on the map. It's just not going to happen. There's a lot of progress that goes there, just like you don't get out of college and go right to being a CEO. Doesn't happen.
Gotta work your way up.
Doesn't happen unless you're the CEO of yourself and your own business and your own company that you start. It's just usually not going to happen though. Well, not right away. But that's what I'm saying though, is that if they get just that one conference win, it's still a win. It's still a win for you as your program, because you didn't have that last year.
Well, and the thing is, the side of the ball I look at is offense, and because that's who I am. I know I'm an offensive-minded guy, and this is a team that wasn't just last nationally when it came to total offense. They were next to last in scoring. So that means you weren't moving the ball, and you weren't putting points up on the board. And I know that they have quarterback right now who is going to be a junior. They've got Gino Regsigno, and then they also have a true freshman, though, Jonathan Lewis. They got to figure out which one of those two is going to be the starter. And the reason why I say that is you got new offensive coordinator in town, and usually I go, okay, new offensive coordinator, and push it off, but this is a big name. Jerry Kill, who used to be the head coach of the Minnesota Golden Gophers, who was the Big Ten Coach of the Year in 2014. I almost said 2024. That was in the future, but 2014. And this is a big name as your offensive coordinator, and his task is to basically take this offense that was, like I said, dead last in total offense, next to last in scoring. And I look at the last 5 games that Gio started for them. Illinois beat them 24-7. He only had 120 yards in that game, 1 for 1. The best game he played was when they lost by 2 to Minnesota, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 INTs. I know there were games where he didn't have interceptions, but 2 of those games he didn't get a score. If this team, basically very simple, if you can move the ball on offense and get some points out of drives, that will help you a little bit more. Because like you said, I look at some of these games, especially that he started, 2 of them, in example, Minnesota, you lose by 2. You move the ball a little bit further, get in field goal range, you maybe get a field goal to win by 1. Indiana, 33-27, you move the ball a little bit more, you get one more score, you're in that game, and you win by a point. So there were some games where they were in it and could have won it in the conference, but to me it all starts with that offense, because if they can't move the ball and they can't put points up on the board, it's going to be a long season for the Scarlet Knights.
I think that you're right, Ricky, obviously. No one's going to disagree with that. And I think that, one of the things is too, for Rutgers, it's being able to find out who that quarterback's going to be. Mm-hmm. Now they've kind of got a group of 3 there. They've got Giovanni Resigno, the veteran Kyle Bolin, who's a transfer coming over from Louisville because he saw he wasn't going to play there with Lamar Jackson. Mm-hmm. And then the third guy is Jonathan Lewis, a guy with a ton of upside. And they're looking for Lewis to end up being the guy, and who could be the guy who could be there then for a couple of years and end up transforming this offense into something that it's not right now, and that's a consistent scoring threat. And I think that that's the big key, is that for Rutgers, they just need to continue. You obviously have to be in the present, but you have to continue to look for the future and look to build for the future. And that's one of those is going to come with recruiting. But I think that if Lewis can turn out to be something good for them, I think that'll be something really huge. And it's always important, especially in college football, be able to build around that quarterback that you have and that will, I think, help everything else. That will help the running game. That will help the offensive line. That will help a lot of things. But I think another thing, too, at least for Rutgers, is the fact that they were unable to really score in the red zone either. I think that's one of their things. They were worst in the country inside the 20. They scored just 17 of 25 times. They lost to Minnesota by 2, like I said. They missed a field goal. They lost to Iowa 14-7, and they were 1 of 4 in the red zone. A couple more field goals, a touchdown. I think that, they really could have looked a lot better than 2-10, and they could have looked a lot better than 0-9 in the conference, but it's capitalizing on those scores. It's so nice to be able to have a good drive and get down there, but it's so disheartening when you have to put 3 up on the board, or you don't even get 3.
You get 0.
That's disheartening. And then your defense to come out there and be out there even longer, and they're going to labor, and the other team does score. That's what's awful. That's what's really demoralizing, disheartening for your defense, and then for your offense, too, to then have to come back out and try and put something together, especially if they come back out and that they have a drive that doesn't go anywhere. That's what really hurts them. So Rutgers has a long way to go. They have a long way to go, I think, but they're not too far off. They have a long way to go from being really successful, but they're not too far off from, I think, being a team that is 4-8. Being a team that is not that bad.
Well, if you get 4-8 to me, that's like going undefeated for Rutgers.
You know what?
You're
I
ecstatic
think you
with
agree.
4 wins.
I think you're right. I would agree with that. They certainly need to just move in the right direction. They need to see that there's progress in the right direction. If they do that, maybe the next year it's 5-7. Well, maybe the next year it's 5-8, 6-7, whatever.
I'll give you the 4 games. The 4 games they have to win to hit that 4 mark. You ready for them? Eastern Michigan and Morgan State. You got to win those 2.
Yes.
You lose either of those, you're not getting to the 4. The other 2, at Illinois, home against Purdue. I'll throw 1 in there for good measure at Indiana as well. The only reason why I say maybe at Indiana is Indiana's going to need, of course, it's a guy coming up from the defensive coordinator ranks and not coming in, but they're going to have new coach Tom Allen. So they might have some, I know it's late in the season, but they might have some, we're not really gelling this season with the first-year head coach. We don't know what's going to happen. But Eastern Michigan, Morgan State, Illinois, Purdue, if they can win all 4 of those games, those are the games I look at because you're not going to beat Penn State. You're not going to beat Michigan. You're not going to beat Ohio State. And I'm looking at a stat here that they have been shut out and are a combined 224-0 against Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and Michigan State. Have never scored a point against those 4 teams. I don't think that might change because Michigan State, they might be a one to give up some points this season, maybe a field goal to this Rutgers team. The other 3 are going to shut them out. Michigan will shut you out. Penn State, those are both on the road. Yeah, you get Ohio State at home. Ohio State's pretty damn good. They'll shut you out as well. It doesn't help that you have Nebraska on the road. You have that Indiana game, which is on the road. The schedule is not impossible to get to that 4 wins. I just think anything past that 4 wins, though, is going to be hard because we didn't even mention who they opened the season against at home is the Washington Huskies, who are a pretty damn good football team in their own right.
They are, and Ricky, those are the exact teams that I was looking at too, and that's exactly who I was going to say. They need to win those 2 non-conference games that they have early in the season, and then they need to be able to win against Illinois and Purdue because I don't see them being able to really have too much of a chance against anybody else. That Washington game is going to be a tough game. Nebraska, Ohio State. Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, like you said, they're no contest. That most of us would say. And Michigan, did I say Ohio State, Michigan? Yeah. Maryland, Indiana. Michigan State's going to be better than last year. They've got to be. I think that it does come down to those 4 games, and truly, if they don't win those, they're not going to. I don't see them winning anything else outside of that. I don't. Their defense has to be so much better. Their run defense has to be so much better. In games against Michigan and Ohio State, Michigan and Ohio State combined to get 891 yards and 13 touchdowns on the ground. That's terrible.
Well, I mean, I even look at the game that I'm looking at, that out of those four that I don't think they are going to win. I mean, you look at it this way, where Foster, the running back for Illinois, that's the game I'm looking at, he scored twice in that game, once on the ground and once through the air, I believe. You also had, that was the game where Chance Couch was the quarterback in that game, who is going to be, it's going to be either him or Jeff George Jr., who are going to be fighting for that starting spot, and we're going to get to Illinois next week. However, that's the game I look at out of the four, and I go, well, Illinois beat you last year, and it was at home. This time you get them on the road, and I know this is going to be a different Illinois team than we saw last year. Some pieces obviously leaving, and some questions there with Lovie Smith's second year, but if you were to ask me, Ricky, this Rutgers team, give me a percentage that they get to those 4 wins, I give you about 30%, because really this team, for sure, I only see 2 wins on the docket. Eastern Michigan and Morgan State. I think that Purdue's going to be better than they were last year, and I think that right now, if you told me to pick a winner in that one, I'd pick Purdue as well. I'm just not confident that Rutgers can, pound for pound, go up against any team in this division and get a win. Now, that's not saying they're not going to, because as we know, it's kind of an any given Saturday type of situation. They could walk into Illinois and get the win. They could walk in to that game against Purdue and get the win. Hell, they could walk in, like I said, to Indiana and get a win late in the season. But that's putting a lot of chance to it, a lot of chance and a lot of luck to try to win 1 or 2. Like, just talking about 2, I kind of think like, well, let's get 1 first, then we can focus on 2, because they just got to win 1 conference game just to be better than last year.
So, Ricky, one thing I want to point out too is the fact that to give Rutgers some credit, because we've kind of been beating up on them here, as everyone has.
And I don't mean to beat a dead horse,
as everyone has since they got to the Big Ten. But I think that some things to mention though are the fact that they've got Jawan Harris returning at wide receiver. They've got Janarian Grant coming back from an ankle injury. He's going to be back this year. He was good for a couple of games last year, but then they lost him for the rest of the season due to that ankle injury. He's back this year. He's a great return man. He's very dangerous in the return game. And, you just need some of those spark plugs to return. And they've got those guys. So at least whoever's going to be a quarterback, whether it be Bolin, whether it be Lewis, whoever it may be, to be able to have some constant and consistent targets to be able to throw to, and some guys who've been there, who know that system, and who can help them take some pressure off of those guys, it's huge. And then Robert Martin returns at tailback. He had 625 yards, 2 touchdowns last year. That's not very good. But if he can up those numbers, get to 800 some yards, 800, 900, get to 5-6 touchdowns, just more production from those areas. And they've got, I think they'll do that because I think they have a solid front line. They've got 3 starters returning there. And I think that that's important. The front line, especially for a offense and a team like this one, a building team, I mean, clearly building towards the future, trying to, is that they need to be able to take pressure off that quarterback, give that quarterback, whoever it is, time to throw, open up some holes for those running backs so they're not being stuffed every time. That's important. So that offensive line to be able to have some returning guys, some returning starters, it's going to be huge. And I think if they're going to be successful, that's where one of the things offensively, that's where it's going to start. And then defensively, you need to be able to stop the run, stop teams on third down, and be able to do all of that. And
get your offense back onto the field.
And get your offense back onto the field. And another thing, an interesting stat, I've kind of thrown out a lot of interesting stats for a couple of different teams. The first quarter scoring, opponents against Rutgers scored 154 points in the first quarter. Rutgers, 27 points in the first quarter. That's it. Only 27 points.
That's what you get when you finish next to last in scoring, and that's, to me, the biggest point. And the last thing I want to make as my kind of biggest key for this season for Rutgers is it comes down to the offense. Like I said, when you rank last in total offense and next to last in scoring, you're not going to win many football games, and it was apparent last season with only 2 wins in the non-conference, not even winning a single conference game. So to me, the big 2 goals that I would say is I wouldn't even put a win marker on it. I would just say, well, the AD will, and that's his job. But for me as a fan, I wouldn't even put a win marker on it. I would say at the end of the year, it is a successful year to me if, and this is why I kind of lean towards Jordan Lewis, because I kind of think of the Miami preview where we had a similar situation. This one has 3, Miami had 2. We used the debate of, do you go with the proven guy from last year or the new guy from this year that hasn't played a single snap in college football? And we kind of had a debate. I was kind of feeling the guy from last year. You were feeling the new guy. This year, because Rutgers is in a completely different situation than Miami is. Miami has maybe national title, maybe some playoff hopes to them. Rutgers is nowhere near that. We're not going to get that twisted. So that's why, to me, I say, hey, you're fast-tracking this guy for the spot. Go ahead and start him. And at the end of the year, if I see an improvement in moving the ball down the field, we move up in total offense, we get on the board a little bit more, and we move up in scoring, then I look at it and go, you know what? Kill came in this year. This guy was a true freshman. He'll be a sophomore next year. We got better. It got better. And we were able to look forward to the future. That, to me, would be a successful season for Rutgers in 2017.
I would agree with you. I think that if I'm a Rutgers fan, the one thing I'm going to be looking for is, did you win a conference game? Mm-hmm. If you won a conference game, I'm pretty pleased. That's what I would be looking for. That's what I'd be looking for, because that would at least show that you're moving in the right direction.
Well, this is where we turn the conversation on to you guys. Let us know down below in the comment section. What do you guys think? What's the biggest key for Rutgers this season? Will Rutgers win a conference game? Because that's the question that we're finally going to ask in a preview is, can a team win a conference game this year? Let us know down below in the comment section. And Brandon, let's move on into the next team. This is a team that we're not used to talking about this low into the standings, and that would be the Michigan State Spartans. And this one, we're just going to get right into it because I think the starting point's easy here. Is this a team in 2017 in the Michigan State Spartans that gets back up into the echelon of Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan and battles for one of the top 3 spots in the East? Or do we see them below those 3 teams and kind of battling it out with the Marylands and the Indianers to kind of fight for who's going to be below them?
Well, I want to start off with, what the heck happened last year? What the heck happened? I mean, they could not for the life of them win any games. They couldn't.
Shocking.
I mean, they won 3.
And we were
They
high,
won 3 whoop-dee.
And we were high on them last year. We were very high on them last year coming in. We thought, hey, you know what? This was going to be the team that could battle one of those teams. And it was just, what I saw is, for the last few years, and I'm going back right now, like you look from 2013 on, really from 2013, it was Connor Cook. It was Connor Cook. Then it was Connor Cook, to where when we got to Tyler O'Connor, it was, to me, one of those things where I looked at it and went, yeah, he's no Connor Cook. And that was the big thing that this team was missing, was that quarterback that was like Connor Cook that they had the year before. Because, I mean, Tyler O'Connor didn't have a terrible year. I mean, 16-9, you're like, man, that's okay. But for a guy who is supposed to be one of the ones that really set up this team, and hey, you're my upperclassman, that's just not acceptable to be under 2,000 yards and only have 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions.
Well, I remember the game. It was Saturday, September 24th.
Who remembers the date?
They played against Wisconsin. because I was at the Notre Dame game.
Okay.
They played Duke. They lost to Duke. It was very embarrassing. But I remember looking up at that scoreboard that would have the scores of the games coming through, and Wisconsin's up big, and then it's 30-6, and I'm like, I thought MSU's up 36, and I'm like, no wait, Wisconsin's up 30-6, and right from that point, because Michigan State had been 2-0, they beat Furman handily, they beat Notre Dame in a close one, but they still played well and ended up taking that one from Notre Dame, and obviously Notre Dame turned out to be a bad team last year. So did Michigan State, but I couldn't believe it, and that was the beginning of a terrible, terrible season for them. They did not win again until they beat Rutgers 49-0. But here's the thing,
and it comes from the quarterback play, though. That's what I look at.
No.
If they had a better quarterback, maybe they would have won a few more. I'm not saying they go to the college football playoff.
Yeah, maybe.
But they're not one win in the conference.
No, they're not one win in the conference. But I think let's just take a look here real quick. They gave up 30 points to Wisconsin. They gave up 31 to BYU. They gave up 54 to Northwestern, 32 to Michigan, 31 to Illinois, 45 to Penn State. Their defense was bad. Their defense was not good. It was inconsistent. It was terrible for the most part. And I think that it's pretty simple to be able to talk and say that they were awful. They only had 11 sacks on the season. They had a 7-game stretch where they had 2 sacks total in those 7 games. And they had 37 2 years ago. This is a defense that's far removed from what that was 2 years ago. However, this year the defense is loaded with veterans. It's loaded with returning talent. And it should be much better. But they've got to be consistent. They've got to be consistent. And they are going to win more games if they can limit these points. You're right. I think they need to be able to have a quarterback that they can say, that guy's my quarterback, he's my starter, that's the guy who's going to be going through all these games. But at the same time, you can put up a lot of points, but if you have nobody to come out and defend, you have nobody to stop opposing offenses like Ohio State's and Michigan's and Penn State's, you're SOL. You are not going to win. You're not going to be able to keep up with them at the high-flying offensive level that they're at most of the time in games. You're not going to do it. And I think that for Michigan State to get back to some consistency, hell, if you get to 20 sacks, if you get to 25 sacks on the season, certainly better than last year. Certainly better than last year. If your secondary can be able to get some more interceptions, break up more passes, if your front 7 can get some pass rush, if your linebackers can get more involved as well too, that's all going to be so helpful for your defense. And it's going to hopefully transition from game to game instead of, 2 games at the beginning of the season where your defense played well, and then 2 games throughout the next 9, 10 ball games where they play pretty well. I mean, after those first 2 games where they won, Indiana, they lost in overtime. Okay. Defense wasn't bad. Michigan, their defense played okay. In Ohio State, their defense did play well, but they lost 17-16, and that's where the offensive side of things, a quarterback, a consistent, solid quarterback, would have really been of good use there.
Well, and one of the guys that I look at is Scott, the running back. And the reason why I'm kind of looking at him was because since 2011, what have the Michigan State Spartans had on offense? They've had a running back. 2011, 2012, Le'Veon Bell. I think you've heard of him. He's doing some things in the NFL, I hear, these days. After that, it was Jeremy Langford, a guy who, recently has been replaced by Jordan Howard on the Bears, but he was a guy that, solid backup to Leonard Fournette, doing some things in the NFL too, is what I'm trying to say. Not on the same level as Bell, but he's doing things, especially did things in college. And then it was the baton gets passed to Scott, which this will be his third season. And the thing I look at with the stats, and this is me trying to connect some dots and go with some trends, I look at last year for LJ Scott. 184 carries, 994 yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground. We look at Le'Veon Bell, the year before his last year, 2011. 948 yards on 182 attempts. He had 13 touchdowns that year. So a little bit more touchdowns, less yards, around the same amount of carries. That next year, catapulted. Double the workload, almost a 2,000-yard rusher, was just over 200 yards shy from a 2,000-yard rushing season, 12 touchdowns on the ground. Jeremy Langford, of course, this was junior into senior year for him. He was the workload right away. When he stepped in junior season, 1,000-yard rusher, 1,400 in year one, 1,500 in year two, 18 touchdowns, 22 touchdowns. He really didn't have that year to kind of say, well, wow, that was my year. This is the one I'm going to build off of. I think what Scott can do with this being his third year could have that build year like Le'Veon Bell did. The numbers were very similar. Same amount of carries, similar amount of yards. Le'Veon had more touchdowns. If Scott can show that same progression that Le'Veon did, that I think can help this Michigan State offense get back to where, I'm not saying that they're going to compete with Ohio State again or Michigan or Penn State. Those are clearly the top three in this division, and those are the ones we're going to be talking about college football playoff with. But I think if Scott, he's the key to me. If he can have a good season, then I might be talking like, okay, they could be the fourth best in this division at the worst. At the worst.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, going back to talking about scoring, in 2014, they scored on... They scored 72% of the time when they got inside the 30. 2014.
And that was that was Langford's senior season, so his second year.
2015, it went down just a little bit, just a tick, 69% scoring inside the 30. But then this past year, 57% of the time that they were inside the 30 did they score. And that's not good. And 9 of the 24 times came against Rutgers and Furman. And, those aren't two very tough opponents. But what I want to say is that they need to not turn the ball over. We talked about that at the top. You talked about with the touchdown to interception ratio.
For Tyler O'Connor.
You cannot turn the football over as many times as they did last year. You also can't have as many penalties as they did last year. Michigan State had 77 penalties last year. Their opponents had 50. MSU opponents had 50 penalties. MSU had 77. They've got to cut down on that. It's ridiculous. That's killing you right there. You've got to be able to do better than that. You've got to be able to have a cleaner game than that. And you cannot turn the football over. Those two things, pair those two things together, and that's terrible. That's a recipe for no success at all.
And another thing I wanted to point to is it was interesting as you were saying those stats about the percentages of them scoring, because I'm looking at the running back position. I'm putting a microscope on that. And you mentioned 2014, and I go, okay, that was Jeremy Langford's, or 2013. That was Jeremy Langford's junior season. All right, 2014, it was this much. Oh, yeah, that was his senior season. He had a little bit of a bump from junior to senior. Then it showed a dip from 14 to 15, and I just look at my computer and I go, LJ Scott was a freshman. That's some big shoes to fill as a freshman coming right out of high school. So, oh, by the way, you got to fill a 22 touchdown back, over 1,500 yard back in Jeremy Langford, because Jeremy Langford was a beast with the Spartans. But we've seen improvement from his freshman to sophomore year. And you even showed it. Oh, the percentage went up from 15 to 16. I think that percentage is going to go up again this year, because I think that, yeah, they've got Johnson wide receiver. You've got the quarterback coming in. But I think that this team offensively is going to ride or die on the running back position and being able to not just control the pace of the game, control the clock, but to control the tempo of this game and say, you know what, we're going to play by our pace. We're going to play by ours, and we're going to get back to that kind of smash mouth running the ball that we're used to from Michigan State teams. And I feel like they have to do that to open up some things for Lewerke and make sure that he can have an improved season this year, because he's taken over for Tyler O'Connor, and they can't afford him to have I'm going to say, step back year, because they need him to get up to where they were with Connor Cook so that they can win some more games. And
Brian Lewerke, actually in his first 2 seasons, redshirted, and he redshirted last year, got injured. And so now coming back from that injury, it's going to be interesting to see how he's able to play. But he's the young guy. He's a mobile quarterback. And you know what we've talked about with mobile quarterbacks. If you've been sticking with us throughout all of these previews thus far, not even counting the Big Ten, the mobile quarterbacks have seemed to do pretty well in college football. And that is what we obviously are focused on here. And that could be good for Michigan State. That could really, really help them. And you're talking about focus on this running game. If Lewerke is the guy that they end up going with, because they do have Damian Terry, the veteran, there as well. But I'm thinking they probably want to go with Lewerke to have that younger mobile quarterback presence. But with him being able to run the football well, that could be and work in their favor as well. That it doesn't have to be, you don't have to rely so much on a guy who's, going to be only sit in the pocket and throw. But I think that it will be very interesting how this happens and how this all plays out, because they lost 4 of their top receivers from last year. And a lot of times, we're talking, who's going to be throwing the receiver the football? But now we're talking, who's Lewerke going to be throwing the football to? I mean, I'm assuming that Lewerke is going to be the guy that they want to probably go with. But who's he throwing to? Who's going to be that core group that comes up and steps up and takes that next step for them, so that MSU can take the next step and completely leave last year in the dust and really have a good season this year. And I'm going to say this. I think that this Michigan State Spartan team, and many people are going to be like, Ricky, you're crazy for saying this. I look at their schedule, and based off of what I see offensively, the weapons that they have, and my microscope on LJ Scott for this season, I look at their schedule and I think there's a good chance they can start 4-0 to start it and start 6-1 or 5-1 overall. And the reason why I say that, Bowling Green, I think, is an easy win for them. I think that Bowling Green won't stand a chance against them. Western Michigan, they're a good team, but they don't have their commander-in-chief there anymore. Head coach going over to Minnesota. So how are they going to do with the new head coach? I don't think they're going to be able to. They're not going to be able to stand up to Power Fives like they would last year when they had row the boat on their team. Notre Dame is a joke to me, so I'm going to give that to Michigan State. Unless Notre Dame comes out week 1 and surprises me, right now they're a joke to me, and they're dumpster fire written all over them. And then Iowa, that's the game where people might say, well, Ricky, that's going to be a affordable opponent. The big thing with Iowa, and we'll get to them next week, but they don't have C.J. Beathard anymore. C.J. Beathard is now in the NFL. He's no longer on the Hawkeye roster. I look at, if Lewerke and this offense can get going, they could win the first 2 games, play a good game against the Fighting Irish, and if they play really solid against Iowa, 4-0. Michigan, I'll give it to the
Wolverines. The Khakis are going to invite them into Ann Arbor and just spank them all up and down the floor. And then Minnesota on the road, like, that's a winnable game. Indiana, we're going to get to them later in this podcast. How are they going to do with a new head coach coming in? I like the schedule for this Spartan team, and the only reason I like it is because of the weapons and the new quarterback they have on offense this year. And I say new only because, like you said, he redshirted the first 2 years and redshirted with injury last year, so we really haven't got to see him. With those weapons and him and kind of some promise on the offensive side, I like the schedule minus Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State.
Well, sure. I think that Michigan State, they're not going to go 1-8 in the conference this year.
No.
They're not going to go 3-9 overall. What Michigan State really wants to do is they want to be back in the top 3, top 4. And now, will they do it this year? I think that they definitely can. I think a winning season for Michigan State this year is 9 wins. That will be a successful season for them to get back to it and to be winning again, be competitive again, and win those games that they should be winning. And I think, but to do that, though, it's going to require that defense making a big switcheroo from what it was last year. You really have to move on. You really have to move forward, and you really have to come up big in these games this year. 11 sacks is not going to cut it. 77 penalties is not going to cut it. Turning the football over on the offensive side as much as they did, not going to cut it. They need to be able to come up in big spots defensively, offensively as well, but they've got to be able to be consistent, and they've got to be able to win the turnover margin in their games and for the season. And if they can do that, they will win those 9 games, and they will be successful, and they will get a bowl game, and they could even put themselves in position to be able to say, Michigan State's knocking on the door for a playoff spot. But it's only if they do those things. If they don't, it won't be a 3-9 season, but it won't be a winning one.
Yeah, I see them finishing behind the big 3. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan are clearly the favorites. I see them as the 4th best team in this division, and I think they're going to be one of the most improved teams, not only in this division, but in this conference overall. And Michigan State fans are finally going to have something to cheer about again after a off season and kind of a year where they'll say, well, that was a hiccup year. We're just going to completely forget 2016 ever happened. But before I move it on to them and bring them into the conversation, Brandon, anything we missed when it came to the Spartans?
I think we're
anything
good.
We missed is we're now going to turn the conversation on to you guys. Let us know what you guys think. Will this Michigan State Spartan team be improved? What do you look at with this team to be the key to a successful season in 2017? And how excited are you for the Spartans in 2017? Let us know down below in the comment section. But Brandon, let's move on into the next team we got. And we got the Maryland Terrapins here. The Terrapins, as I'm going to say it like Charles Barkley. That was terrible. But I'm going to say the Maryland Terrapins. And they actually had an improved season last year. First year under DJ Durkin coming in as the head coach. They go from 3-9 in 2015 to a 6-7 record, 3-6 in the conference last season. So I want to start Maryland off with this. Do you see them continuing this trend in Durkin's second year as head coach? And if so, how much more improved? That made sense in my head. How more improved will this team be in 2017? If I can get words that can come out of my mouth and form actual sentences.
If you can speak.
Yeah.
Well, I think that where Maryland is right now is about where I think that they'll probably be again this year. And I think that they may take that 6-7 and maybe just flip it to 7-6. I think that they definitely could do that. I'm not saying that it's because they're not a good team or they're a bad team or anything like that. It's because I think there's so many other really, really good teams out there. Honestly, this is me. Once we are done talking with Maryland, the next couple of teams in the East, pretty good, pretty much trending up. But so is Maryland. I don't want to count them out and say they're not. They are trending up. And the reason why I'm a little hesitant right now of them being able to make further steps forward this year or really big steps forward this year is because of one guy, Kasim Hill. their freshman quarterback. This guy is supposed to be the next big thing for them at the quarterback position. But for me, it's a matter of time until he gets there. How quickly will he be ready? Is he ready week 1? I don't think so. I don't think he's going to be ready week 1, but they've got a number of other guys behind him. Caleb Henderson, Max Bortenschlager. They've got other guys there, but Hill is the man they want. And they had a great recruiting class. And Hill's part of that really strong recruiting class. And that's why I think Maryland, whether it be this year, whether it be next year, is going to find themselves really moving in the right direction. They already did this year, but I think they're going to find themselves continuing to do that because, as I've mentioned a couple of times in a lot of these previews, recruiting is a really big thing. And if you're focused on that, if you're focused on success there, you're going to have success. Most of the time, you're going to have success on the field. Let's take the big powerhouses. In Alabama, they always have really good recruiting. They always have a good product on the field. Ohio State, they always have good recruiting. They have good product on the field. So I think that this Kasim Hill, freshman, guy who is going to be the guy there, and they want to be the guy there for the next couple of years and lead this program. He's expected to be able to get his shot right away, but right away, how quick is that? Is that week 1 or is that week 3 or is that week 4? Is whatever. But it's how quickly then does he perform? You know what I mean? It's like you may get your shot, but how quickly are you comfortable with the starting position? How quickly are you comfortable with that offense? Game day is so much different than on the practice field on a Thursday.
I'll be completely honest. I look at the schedule and the only reason I bring up the schedule so soon is I look at the schedule for this Terrapin team. And I think of what I said in the Michigan State preview I was like, oh man, with what they got with Lewerke and Lang and Johnson and all these weapons, that the schedule doesn't scare me, but I feel confident going into this year's schedule. But for the Terrapins, I don't feel that. And you might be saying, well, Ricky, why? They have similar opponents obviously they play each other, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. They both have Rutgers on the schedule. They both have Minnesota on the schedule. But there are key games that I look at. At Texas, I think Tom Herman's going to have his boys ready to play. I don't think that they get the win there. I mean, another tough one, UCF, Central Florida. That's a coin toss game. Minnesota's a coin toss game. But I just look at all the top 3, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. I think Michigan State's going to be improved. That's 4 tough games. You get Wisconsin on the road. That's 5. Northwestern could be a good team this year. That's 6. Too many games, 7 if you count the non-conference Texas game. There are too many games this year that I think because of their youth and inexperience, they're not going to be able to pull out. And I look at this Maryland team, and I kind of want to say, come back to me in 2 years.
Are you saying Maryland's inexperience?
I think
they've got plenty of experience in the defensive side of things.
I think
they have 10 guys returning.
Overall,
they're going to have a really good linebacking core. They need to be better in the secondary, but they have guys returning. The experience is there. Where would you say is the inexperience outside of the quarterback position? Where I would agree with you, there's probably some inexperience there. But if this guy is the real deal and he can come out and he can make an impact right away, that's important. But outside of that, where's the inexperience?
Well, and I look at it, and you've got upperclassmen, and I'm looking at Henderson coming in from a transfer. You have Jackson, the cornerback, and you've got Denzel Coiners, the safety. Those just because they're juniors doesn't mean they're going to transfer in and be boom right away. I still think this team, I think they're going to be, with Durkin as the head coach, he's very enthusiastic and he can kind of rally the troops. But I feel like we need a year or 2 of his system to get more in place to where I look at this team and I go, come back to me in 2 years. And in 2 years, this team could be a team that we look at and go, hey, the big three? Yeah, there's another one there. There's another one. There could be in 2 years, 5 teams we look at between Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, because I don't think they're going anywhere. Michigan State, I think they're just going to get better. And Maryland in 2 years, I think, will be another team to where we're looking at this division and we're going, damn, I would not want to play in it. Would not want to play in it at all. And I think this season for Maryland is going to be, yes, the inexperience at quarterback is a big one, especially if you go with the young guy. But I just look at this team and I see a lot of youth. And, you're looking at sophomores on the offensive line, sophomores and freshmen, not just on the starting lineup. I'm talking about their depth. Their depth is very youthful behind them to where if the junior or senior has to come out and take a breather, I'm putting a freshman or a sophomore in there, and that's where the kind of lapses could go. Once they have this complete team that is older, then they're going to make strides, and that's why I say in 2 years, come and see me, because the Terrapins are going to be good with DJ Durkin.
I think you're right. I think in 2 years we'll probably be looking at Maryland and saying, "Wow, they made those strides. They got the recruits that they wanted. They put them in place. They performed for them." And I think that we are going to be talking about Maryland being one of the more top teams in the Big Ten East Division. But at the same time, I don't want to count them out this year from being able to maybe take a step in that direction of, maybe they win one more game.
That's exactly it. Maybe they're 7-6 this year.
Maybe they win 2 more games. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're 8-5. Maybe they just call up Kevin Sumlin and say, "Hey man, you do this every year. How do you get to 8-5? What is your method?" But I think that ultimately, if you go down the list here, mm-hmm. We can't. It's so easy and so hard at the same time to be able to say, Texas, Tom Herman's got his boys, ready.
Of course, in the preseason, it's so easy to say win, loss, win, loss, win, loss.
Well, exactly. But how many times do we see mm-hmm. something we expected Michigan State to be very, very solid last year, and we would have been able to sit here last year and go mm-hmm. down and that's a win, that's a win, that's mm-hmm. a win, and that ended up being a bad loss. Close.
There's
but
a reason
loss.
why you go out and play the football games.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. And I've said this multiple times because mm-hmm. I know that our fans, I know that our viewers a lot of times, especially if they're really, really strong and passionate about mm-hmm. the school or the team, they'll go through, they'll hear us say something, they'll be like, F you! That's not going to happen. They're going to be better. Mm-hmm. And I get it. I do. But I think to be able to sit here and still go down and go through and, mm-hmm. and say what you think, especially when Penn State's going to be there again.
Yeah.
Michigan State's got to be better. Michigan is Michigan.
I just look at Michigan,
and
Ohio State, and Penn State.
Those last 3 games, I would like to not play them.
Yeah.
Michigan State and Penn State, you get 2 of them at home. Mm-hmm. You go to MS, you go to East Lansing for the Michigan State game. But that's going to be a rough, tough way mm-hmm. to end the season. That's going to test your guts. In that one.
There's one group of positions that I'm going to say that I think will be, when I say the Achilles heel to this team, I'm putting the asterisk of if this group experiences any kind of injuries, they're done. And this is going to be the Achilles heel, is the offensive line, because I look at the depth chart right now according to ourlads.com. And from listing from left tackle to right tackle, you've got redshirt junior, redshirt junior, redshirt junior, redshirt junior at everything but right guard. You have a sophomore right guard. But then I look at the second string. Yeah, your left tackle's a junior, but the backup's a redshirt freshman. Yeah, left guard, he's a redshirt junior, but the backup's a freshman. Center, it's a sophomore. Right guard, it's also a sophomore, so that's a wash because they're both the same. Right tackle, you're going from junior to freshman. If this core experiences one injury to any of those redshirt juniors, what if it's multiple of those redshirt juniors and those freshmen have to come into the game That's the core that I look at, the group on this team, and I say, like, if I'm a Maryland fan, I'm sitting there and I'm going to bed and I'm going to say my prayers and I go, please God, do not let the offensive line experience any injuries this year. If there is one thing I ask you, please, just don't let them experience any injuries. Because if they do, it's not going to be a good season. And then we're looking at it, and at the end of the year, we'll say, well, this team was a bum and da-da-da-da. And then there'll be the logical ones that are like, whoa, but guys, offensive line got injured. That is what I look at, and I fear for this Terrapin team because of that's one position. It's a key one where I mentioned they have that inexperience on the second string and in the depth. Not necessarily starters, but in the depth.
Let me give you my final comment on Maryland.
Okay.
And we'll move on.
Okay.
It will be a winning season for Maryland this year if they go to another bowl game.
And they will go to another bowl game?
It will be a winning season if they go to a bowl game.
So if they go 6-6, go to a bowl game, and either go 7-6 or 6-7. That'd be a winning season.
Yes.
I'm with you because if I'm a Maryland fan and you go 6-7, do not think to yourself, well, you know what? We were 3-9 and then we went to 6-7. Now we stayed the same. It's over. No. Do not think that at all. Because like I said, and I'm going to use the offensive line as kind of the microcosm here for my little example. You know how I said all those classes for the offensive line? Do you notice what class I didn't say?
Senior.
Those redshirt juniors, they become redshirt seniors next year. That sophomore in the starter, he becomes a junior. Those freshmen become sophomores. They just get a year older. And that, to me, is going to be the importance with this team. This team will get older, will get more experience all around in the next couple of years. I'm saying 1 to 2 years with some more recruiting classes, maybe getting those transfers to come in as well. I think this Maryland team, I'm not going to say the sky is the limit, because then it just kind of seems like I'm saying you're going to be a playoff team. You could be able to compete in this division very, very soon within the next couple of years if the cards play right and Durkin can bring in some recruiting classes. That is how I will say it. But we're going to turn the conversation on to you guys. Let us know down below, what do you see for Maryland? Maryland fans, what is a success for you? What is not a success for you this season? Let us know down below in the comment section. And Brandon, we're going to move on to our next team, and this is a team in the Indiana Hoosiers that they made a little bit of a change, and it was an interesting change because they went to a bowl game, and usually when a team goes to a bowl game, they usually don't fire their head coach because they see it as a winning season because they went to said bowl game. However, Indiana made the coaching change. Kevin Wilson out. Tom Allen, no relation to Tim Allen from Home Improvement, but Tom Allen, the defensive coordinator, gets promoted to the head coaching spot. This is a guy in Allen who basically got the job because of the improvements that he made on defense, a unit that is going to return 9 starters. And they feature one of the best linebackers in the Big Ten. And I basically want to start with that. Allen getting promoted from defensive coordinator to head coach. Do we see any hiccup this year from the Hoosiers because it is now Tom Allen and not Kevin Wilson sitting in that head coaching seat?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think that that'll be much of a difference. I think there'd be more, and I wouldn't even say cause for concern, but it would be if they brought in someone completely new, someone who is not with the organization, someone who's not with the team. They brought someone else in,
who's going to make sweeping changes.
Who's going to bring his own staff, who's going to change everything up like that. No, that didn't happen. I think that Allen is promoted, and I think that's going to, him being a defensive guy and going to now the head coaching spot, he's going to have to focus a little bit more on offense. Mm-hmm. I think that we're going to see a pretty balanced attack, but at the same time, know that they have a quarterback who can really air the football out. He needs to cut down on his turnovers, but To really answer your question, is that no, I don't think so. I don't think so because he was there. He understands the system. He gets the system. He ran the defense. Defense will still continue to be fine. I think they finally were able to stop someone last year, which was outstanding for them. Indiana, I have felt for a little while now, is on the cusp. Of being able to be a good team. Mm-hmm. I feel like they're close. They're really close. A game against, who was it? Ohio State, not too long ago.
Even Michigan, they played close as well.
Yeah. I think that they're getting there. They're just about there. And I don't think that this move to change coaches is going to limit them from getting to where they want to be.
You know what's the only thing I do not envy Tom Allen for? His first ever game as a head coach at home against Ohio State on Thursday night, August 31st. It's like, hey, welcome to the big leagues, boy. Here is your first opponent in the Ohio State Buckeyes. Probably not the most ideal team to be playing in your first ever game as a head coach, but the thing I look at, which would be, to me, the thing to look at as we're moving from Wilson to the Tom Allen era in Indiana, is, like you said, the offense. Mainly because he's not an offensive guy. He's not going to have his imprints on the offense. He's going to leave that up to new offensive coordinator and Mike DeBoer, who's coming over from, he was, for the last 2 seasons, the OC at Tennessee. And that, to me, is going to be the big one. You have a new scheme coming in. Yeah, you've got most of the same guys returning personnel-wise, but a new scheme in a offensive coordinator who's not just a veteran coordinator, but last year at Tennessee, 36.4 points, 143.7 yards per game at Tennessee last season. And those were better than Indiana's, who was about 11 points fewer per game and about 20 yards less per game than Tennessee had. Now, the big question, and the big thing you may notice is, hey, Ricky, who's Indiana's quarterback? And I go, oh, that's Richard Legout. Well, who was Tennessee's quarterback? Joshua Dobbs. I can see where that would be a little bit of a, that's a big difference. So I wouldn't.
Let me jump in and ask you. You say that's a big difference. Leaning more towards which side?
I would lean towards more to where. What I was going to say is, if I'm an Indiana fan, I don't look at those 36.4 and 443 and go, we're going to do that immediately. Dobbs was a veteran quarterback. He knew what he was doing and knew how to work with Mike DeBoer. It's going to take DeBoer a little bit of work to work with Legout to, with me, the biggest thing he's got to do day one is come in and say, well, boy, we're not going to make mistakes anymore. We're not throwing interceptions. We're going to take care of the football, because if he can have his quarterback limit mistakes, a guy who had 17 picks last season, that will be the first thing to help Indiana get on a better footing, a even better footing than they were last year.
So I just want to go back to your point where you were talking on Joshua Dobbs and then Legout. And I think that Legout, if he is able to cut down on the interceptions, I mean, they averaged about 274 passing yards per game last year, which is not bad. And I think that if they are able to cut down on those picks, turn some of those picks into touchdowns, he could be one of the best passers in the Big Ten, just because of the way that he's able to bomb the football down the field, because of the way that he's able to find receivers who he's going to have a pretty good receiving core. He's going to have a strong offensive line. And I just think that we are going to be able to see a guy who is going to turn this offense into a pretty good offense here at Indiana.
Well, and the thing I look at is, yes, I'm looking at stats now between Legout and Dobbs, because that's the big comparison. Dobbs last season, I would argue that Dobbs' junior campaign was a little bit better than his senior campaign. Yes, you look at it and say, well, Ricky, he was completing 63% of his passes, and really that's the saving grace for Dobbs last year, is that he completed most of his passes so that the 12 interceptions that he had didn't seem like that much of a red flag. But I look back to his junior year, yeah, he had about 700 less yards, but 2,200 yards is good for a quarterback. But I look at 15-5, and I look at 5 interceptions, and I'm like, yes, that is what we want. And to me, I'm not saying that, like, oh, you know what, get him out, he's not Joshua Dobbs. I'm looking at it where I see 17 picks only compared to 19 touchdowns, and that's the thing that needs to come down. If that can come down and the completion percentage can creep up about 2 more percent, get a little bit closer to that 60% mark. I know when you're throwing deeper down the field, that percent kind of suffers because they're not high percentage passes. But if he can creep that percentage up, limit those interceptions, which you're thinking, well, if he can limit the interceptions, maybe some of those are going to receivers. Maybe that'll up the completion percentage just in itself. That is going to be the big thing, and the big thing that DeBorg will need to work with Legal to make sure this offense is better, because the defense, like I said, 9 returning starters at the beginning of this segment, and they are a team or a side of the ball that is looking to just improve on the already improvement that they made with Tom Allen last year.
Well, now I'm looking over at the schedule this upcoming year for Indiana.
No favors to start.
Well, it's just in game 1.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But then you've got game 2, 3, 4, September 9th through the 23rd. They should win those 3 games. So you should have 3 wins there early on in the season. You could start off 3-1. And then at the end of the season, you play on the road at Illinois, home versus Rutgers, on the road at Purdue. I think you can win those 3 games. And you can have your 6 wins right there. And that would match what you won last year, 6 games. And then you have a game against Wisconsin. You have a game against Maryland. And, you know, you can be competitive in both of those games. And then you've got your big 3 of Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State right there in the middle of your season, September 30th to October 21st. And I am honestly not going to count Indiana out of being competitive in all of those games and possibly being able to win one of them. Just because, like I said, I feel like they're getting to the point where they're almost there. They're almost there to being a good team. And at the same time, too, I get, and I said the big 3. Ohio State's part of that. That's the big 4. It's the 3 of the big 4. So I kind of
I was saying big 3 because I only see Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan as the big 3.
But Michigan State is going to be there. I just picture them being there again this year. You could beat one of those teams. You could. You absolutely could on any do not argue with me, because any given day you could. Any given day you could. Michigan was down to Colorado 28-0 early. I get it. It was early, but they were asleep. They were asleep at the wheel. If you are a team that could come in, play defense, and Indiana has defense, you could come in and you could take care of one of these teams. You could.
I'll agree with you in the sense that I'll give them a puncher's chance, only because, like you said, and you said this earlier, they were in it a season or 2 ago against Michigan. They've been in it against Ohio State before. I just feel with this schedule, I actually like it if I'm Indiana, because, I mean, game 1, I expect them to lose. Only because Tom Allen's first game as a head coach, and really, I feel like the thing that is going to bog down Indiana heading into game 1 is there's a lot of things that go into a week of prep as a head coach that you wouldn't have to deal with as a defensive coordinator. There is a rhythm that you kind of get in as a head coach where it's like, we usually have the press conference on this day, then on this day we do this, and all the little things. I think that it's going to take him a week or two to get into that rhythm. Now, the good thing is your next 3 games are all winnable. I just see that Ohio State one is, wow, if I didn't have Ohio State this week, it would have made things a lot easier. Like, it sucks having that week 1. Now, I will say I agree with you that they puncher's chance against the next 3, but I do see them in my prediction going 0-4 in the conference I'll say 0-3 in the conference to start. The game that I could see them winning is Michigan State. And the thing I really like about this schedule is what you said. They've got the 3 winnable non-conference games, just like we say there's a puncher's chance there. There's a puncher's chance that they could lose. But I also like that they kind of have it in a conference-wise in a 3-section pair to me. The first 3 games, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, I see them losing those 3 games, but it's okay. That's fine to lose those. The next 3, yeah, they're challenging games, winnable games though. Michigan State, Maryland, and Wisconsin. The next 3, Illinois, Rutgers, Purdue, very winnable games for this. So how I see it going is win the last 3, win your non-conference games, boom, there's your 6. Then that second chunk I said, Michigan State, Maryland, Wisconsin, you win one of those games. That's kind of like that kind of return they talk about when it's like, yeah, you know what? I got my money back. So anything from this point is just adding to the pot. That's what that middle 3 will be if they win the non-conference in the last 3 games.
So here's the point that I wanted to make about that first game with Ohio State. It's the fact that if they lose that game, they can't get blown out, because that is going to set a tone, a negative tone for the rest of the season. And I'm not saying that if they get blown out there, they're obviously going to just have a terrible season, but it does not start the season off on a good note. If you can come out and you're able to fight and you're able to scrap and you end up losing 31-23, I'd be freaking stoked. You know, but you can't come out and just drop an egg. 31-0.
I don't think that a blowout would hurt them too much. And the reason why is this. If I look at last year, they played them October 8th. They got blown out 38-17. Now that was a 3-1 Indiana team coming into that game in Columbus. How I would look, it really depends on how the game goes, but let's say it's a game where that Indiana offense turns over the ball. I think that could, like, that game, even in a blowout, could be a very teachable moment that Allen and DeBoer can use for the offense. If it's the offense, that's the big thing. It could be the defense that screwed it up. We got to play the game to see how it goes. But let's say, for the sake of argument, it is we turn the ball over too much. DeBoer can go to Lagow and go, see, we're going to take this as a learning experience. This is why we got to limit the mistakes. Because if we don't limit the mistakes, things like this can happen against anybody.
His learning experience was last year, and now he's had this offseason. He's going through this offseason. If he comes out and he throws 3 picks game 1, I'm thinking, crap. You know, we're gonna do it again this year. He's gonna throw 17 or more picks again this year. That's not a great way to start things off for your fan base. That's not a great way to start things off in front of your athletic director. If you're the head coach or the offensive coordinator or whoever. I just think that they need to come out with a strong performance against Ohio State. You know, especially with the way that I've talked about Indiana being that team that's right on the cusp of being able to be a good team, and you come out and you just absolutely crap your pants, that is not the way that the tone you want to set for your 2017-18 season. It's just not. It's
not the ideal tone, but here's what I'm thinking in my head. You can't come into this season. Yes, you can say, and I do agree with you, this is a team that A, is going to be improved, but B, is one of those teams where you look at where it's like behind the big 3, it's Michigan State and Indiana I expect to fight for that 4th spot. However, let's not kid ourselves. This is not going to be an Indiana team that coming into Ohio State, coming into Penn State, coming into Michigan, I'm going to be saying, yeah, give it to the Hoosiers in this one. And let's be honest, the only reason that they were in the Michigan game last year is because, and I'll say the same thing for Colorado, was it really because, I feel like I hate saying this because I don't want to take away anything, but it's true in this case because I mean this more as a knock against Michigan. Michigan came out flat-footed in those two games. If Michigan came out like the team we thought they were, then we wouldn't be talking about, man, they played a close game against Michigan, and man, Michigan almost blew it against Colorado. But the point is, we still expect boom, boom, boom to be said. It's the rest of the games that I feel like they can make their mark. So I would look at, I'm not going to tell my team this. Of course you wouldn't. You'd be stupid to say so. But in the back of my head, if I'm the AD, if I'm Tom Allen, I'm looking at Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, and I'm determining in my own head, yeah, if we lose those games this season, who cares? Let's win the rest of them.
But what I'm saying, though, Ricky, is the fact that what you just said, yeah, Michigan came out, that's what, they came out flat-footed. Who's to say that they can't come out flat-footed against an Indiana, and Indiana takes advantage of that and is able to get the win? That's what I'm saying, though, is that, so we can't just say, we're playing the best, we're probably going to lose. You have to think, this is college football.
Oh no!
That's when you have to then, and I'm not saying then that you're this. Oh, Indiana beat Michigan. Here they come, undefeated season. No, but I'm saying that you were able to then go and we're able to have a what I'm looking at my text message. That's why I'm thrown off now. That you were able to go and get them. It shows that. You know what?
Could get the upset.
You didn't play at their level of you. They came out flat-footed. You stayed there.
You played
at your
them.
level. You played at your level. You played at your level of football. You went through. You kept going. You kept grinding. They started to come back towards the end, but it was too late because you had already put more points up. You had already gotten them earlier and taken advantage of it. It's all about being able to take advantage of the different moments in games.
Yeah.
When you know what? That team's down. They're struggling right now. We have got to be able to take advantage. I mean, look, perfect example. It's in the NFL, but it's Super Bowl this past year, Atlanta and the Patriots.
Oh, the Patriots could have just said it's over.
The Patriots stunk. Stunk. Atlanta kept going, and then all of a sudden, they were putting the brakes on. They're pumping the brakes. And the Patriots said, fuck no, and they just kept going.
And what I'm talking about,
and that's what I'm saying.
I want to just
in something like this.
I want to just clarify that I'm not saying coming in thinking if we lose these three, you're going to coach every game, like you're going to win that game. Of course, you'd be stupid not to. I'm saying November 25th is over. It is now 2018. We're in February. Getting ready for next season, or it's just after November and the complete regular season is over. Looking back, if I see losses in 2017 to Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan State, after the fact, I am not putting much weight on those losses this year, even if they were blowouts, because after the fact, I would see those and go, well, you know what? How did our team improve this year? And to me, I think the big improvement games are going to be Michigan State, because Michigan State, we're both expecting them to be back. We're getting on the bandwagon again. If you can show improvement in that game, a Maryland team who is, again, we talked about them a few moments ago, they look to be more improved this year. And a Wisconsin team, which is always ready to play each and every year, those are, to me, the three big games. If you can steal the majority of those and go from, because I look at it where I see them as a 6-win team. Well, 5 to 6, depending on the Illinois game. I got some blue and orange in my heart. Sue me. However,
all right, I'll get the paperwork going.
5 to 6, don't sue me. By 5 to 6 wins there, if you add 2 to 3, 1, 2, or 3 more wins onto that, you now turn that into a potential of a 9-win season. Those are the 3 games that are going to be the most important to Indiana this year, are those 3 Michigan State, Maryland, and Wisconsin games. Not the Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. Although if they get an upset there, it benefits them.
I agree with you. I am 100% on board with you in that. They need to win, and I was just thinking that they need to win all the games outside of those, get the job done there, and then winning one of those games is a cherry on top. That's what it is.
And that is, to me, what this season's going to come down to. Win the games you're expected to win, and then just steal some of those ones in the middle. Michigan State, Maryland, and Wisconsin. But we've rambled enough about the Hoosiers.
Yeah, holy crap. How long have we gone? I feel like a half hour.
This is like 22 minutes. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know down below in the comments section. How's Tom Allen, no relation to Tim Allen, going to do in his first year as head coach with the Hoosiers? How do you think Mike DeBorg kind of shapes this offense with the new scheme? And how many wins you giving the Hoosiers this year? And what do you expect for their season overall? Let us know down below in the comments section. And Brian, it's now time to move on into our next team, and that is the Michigan Wolverines. And this one is a very easy one to start off with. This is a team looking like they're going to go to the college football playoff. They are winning. I know they had that one game against Colorado you wanted to rag on them for in the last one, but they started out slow.
They were terrible in the beginning, 28-0.
But then the Iowa game happens. They lose a heartbreaker there. Yeah, they win the next one. Then they get a game stolen from them in a game where they stopped him at the line. It wasn't a first down. Go back and look at it. I am completely against the call on the field still to this day. Michigan State should have won that game, but they lose to Ohio State. Season's over. They're not going to the college football playoff. So this one's easy, Brandon. Is this the year Harbaugh, with everything he's bringing in, the guys he's bringing back, led offensively by Wilton Spate on offense at quarterback, is this the year Harbaugh and the Wolverines put it together and represent the Big Ten in the college football playoff? That's where we got to start in this one. The next three teams, we're probably going to start with where are they college football playoff wise, because any three of them could represent the Big Ten in the playoff.
Well, let's be honest. There's a lot of personnel turnover right now. They have to replace 11 of 13 tacklers on the defensive side of the football for what was the nation's #1 defense. So that is not good. Or I should say, that'll be a challenge. That'll be a challenge. Wilton Spate is back at quarterback, and that's huge for this team. To have Wilton Spate back at quarterback, to have him leading the pack, that's really big. But then it's going to be, will the young talent at receiver rise up and kind of rise up to where they were in their recruiting class? Like, they're supposed to be good. Will they be? Will they be good this year? Will they realize, I don't want to say realize what's at stake, but realize that, hey, the last couple of years, people have kind of been, is Michigan going to the playoff? Is Michigan going to the playoff? Is Michigan going to the playoff? They have not. And I feel like this is the year where if Michigan doesn't go, do people start to say, all right, well, Jim Harbaugh's good. He's always going to have a good team. They're always going to go to a pretty good bowl game. But okay, Ohio State, Penn State, what do you guys got? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying after a while, you want to, and I understand there's only 4 spots in the college football playoff, but you need to be able to make it there. You have to. If you're Michigan, it is a disappointment if you do not win the Big Ten East. And then it is a disappointment if you do not win the entire Big Ten. And then it's a disappointment if you don't go to the college football playoff. I think it's simple as that, because that's what Michigan expects. But I think that you're right. I think that they're so close, Ricky, right now, that if they do not make it, if they do not win the East, if they do not win the Big Ten, people are going to start questioning, how good is Michigan? Good enough to win in the regular season, good enough to get a bowl game, but not good enough to win it all.
And this is where the voice of reason comes in. And I know you usually don't either hear my voice or see my voice when you think of the voice of reason, but here it is. I think that Michigan fans temper the expectations this year. And the reason why I say that is Jim Harbaugh came in 2015, a decently built squad from Brady Hoke before, was able to do what Brady Hoke couldn't, though. Got the most out of his players for a 10-3 season, 6-2 in the conference. They won the Citrus Bowl, finished third in the East. Coaches, they were 11th overall. AP, they were the 12th ranked team at the end of it. Then last year, he took that team that he already kind of came in and coached them very well. They just got older and more experienced. 10-3 season, 7-2 in the conference. Yeah, they lost in the Orange Bowl, but they were a top 10 team, coaches and AP. This year, the reason why I say temper the expectations is because this is going to be the first year at Michigan that Jim Harbaugh is going to have to do something that he hasn't had to do before. And that is go through, kind of pull everything back and kind of go through some growing pains, especially on offense, because this will be one of the youngest teams that Michigan sees overall in some time. And I feel like what's going to happen is, I mean, I kind of hate that they have that Florida game first, because I feel like if the development process has to be sped up here. And that's going to be the real thing that keeps Michigan either in or out of the college football playoff, is how can they develop young guys and get them ready to go. Like you said, 11 tacklers on the defensive side need to be replaced, and that was the number one defense that we had a year ago. I feel like temper the expectation, because if they lose to Florida, if they lose Penn State and Ohio State, and those are the only three losses they have. Let's say they do lose one to like a Michigan State or an Indiana. Let's say they have 4 losses. I say you look at it and you go, you know what? The expectations should have been a little bit less this year based on what we had. A younger team. This was one that needed to develop. This team's going to get better. Jim Harbaugh will be able to get them there, because there's no question that Jim Harbaugh can coach. We've seen it at both the NFL level and the college level. And the thing that I find the most interesting is at the 49ers and now at Michigan, we've kind of seen the same thing. When he came in, it was a 49er team that was dysfunctional. Head coaches couldn't get, like, we were all remembering, like, the lasting one that we remember is the Singletary days before that. Then they had the interim. Then it was Jim Harbaugh. And everyone's like, man, Singletary can't get this roster to do anything. Harbaugh comes in, boom, this roster does things. Same thing with Michigan. Why is Brady Hoke not doing anything? Why is this team not winning? Brady Hoke's gone. Harbaugh comes in, boom, 10-3 seasons, first 2 out. But now, like I said, a younger team, not inexperienced because he has guys here and there, but just a younger team overall that needs to develop. And that's going to be the big story for Michigan. However, the bad thing is they're a Michigan team where I say temper the expectations, but no one will. Everyone's going to say playoff or bust, and then everyone's going to be looking for, if they don't make the playoffs, they're going to be calling for heads, which will make the next season for Jim Harbaugh not too pleasant, I think, in Ann Arbor.
Well, Ricky, I'll be honest with you, isn't it playoff or bust? If you don't make the playoff, then it didn't matter. Great, you got a bowl game. Cool. We're used to that under Jim Harbaugh now. We've had that for a couple years.
And that's why
when are we finally going to get into the real stuff? That's what people are going to be asking. That's what people want. The winning is nice. The winning, the blowing teams out in the regular season, I mean, that's all fine and good. But if it doesn't end you with a spot in the college football playoff, then it didn't matter.
And that's the thing I do want to say about the schedule that I like. The Florida game, I'm not too sure how, At this point, I don't know if I'm going to pick Michigan to win that game.
That game could go either way. That game could go either way. It's going to be such a good game.
That game could go either way. We have questions on both sides. We have the youthful Harbaugh's Wolverines that we're already talking about they need to develop, and that's going to be game one. But Florida, we talked about them before. They have, which quarterback are we going to see? Are we going to see Zaire? Are we going to see Felipe Frank? But let's say they lose that game for the sake of argument. The thing that I love about their schedule is two things. One, they could win out the rest of the way, and at one loss in a Big Ten championship could be in the running for a playoff spot. And two, when they get to Penn State and Ohio State, well, Ohio State's always in the same spot on the schedule. They are at late October, late November, to where hopefully, if you're a Michigan fan, you're sitting there and you're hoping that by the time we get to that Penn State game, we have gone through the Cincinnatis, the Air Force, the Purdue, the Michigan State, the Indiana, to where we get to that game and these guys have come together. They've developed to where by that time we're looking at it and we're going, yeah, this is a team that can beat Penn State, that can beat Ohio State. They just need to excel that development time so that their guys are ready for that Penn State game. The only difficult part, Michigan State should be a lot better, and Indiana could be a little bit better than they were last year.
So, Ricky, here's a couple of things, and then we'll talk about it after. So, 3 things. First half scoring for Michigan last year, 293 points in the first half. Their opponents had 80 all year long. Rushing touchdowns, Michigan with 41, and their opponents with 9. And then red zone scoring, Michigan scored 91% of the time in the red zone. They held opponents to 71% red zone scoring. Opponents got to the red zone 28 times. Michigan got to the red zone 68 times. Those stats are stats for a team that should be in the college football playoff. They have not been. That needs to change. That needs to change. And this year, Michigan is changing. They don't have some of the big name guys that they had. They still have some, but they don't have all. They lose a lot on defense, but they are hopefully reloading that defense up. And Michigan is not going to say this is a rebuild year. They'll say it's a reload. They'll say it's we're working through just some adjustments. That's what they'll say, but
They are.
But it is kind of a rebuilding mode.
A little bit.
I would say especially on the defensive side of things.
Which is led by, got to give a shout out to Mo Hurst. Mo Hurst, friend of the podcast. Got to give a shout out to him. He's going to be one of the leaders on this defense that is losing the 11 guys.
They're losing a lot there. That's not to say that the guys coming up aren't going to be good. It's not going to say that the returning guys aren't going to be good, but it's to say that Michigan was as good as it was in the last 2 years and wasn't able to make it to the playoffs. They now maybe won't be as dominant as what they were, and they're still shooting to try and get to the playoffs. So I'm just trying to put that into perspective. And I don't hold anything against Michigan. I may be called out for, you're a Michigan hater. I have nothing against Michigan. I think it's beautiful. Traverse City is a beautiful place to go visit. Very nice.
Especially the beach bums. Gotta love the beach bums.
But I think that I'm just trying to put in perspective everything that has happened for Michigan and everything that's currently happening for Michigan. Ricky, the floor is yours, buddy. You've been trying to cut me off for the last 30 seconds.
It's the point that you make where you're like, when's you get over the hump? When do you win the division? I looked 2 years ago, Harbaugh's first year. The Utah game, they lose 24-17. I take that, it looks like a bad loss because Utah, they should have been able to beat Utah, but that was Harbaugh's first game as a college coach. A first game coming from the NFL to college, which is a very different atmosphere. Other than that, the only 2 teams they lost against, a number 7th ranked Michigan State team that was a 27-23 loss, and I believe that was Jeremy Langford's senior year. So they had that going for them with Michigan State. And then Ohio State, they got blown out 43-13, but that was a good Ohio State team, number 8th in the nation. They came back and beat Florida in their bowl game, like I said, the Citrus Bowl. Then last year, yeah, they started off slow against Colorado. Yeah, they almost lost to Indiana. The only thing with that Indiana game that I look at is how much hangover and how much shell shock did you get from that Iowa game? Because the Iowa game happened, and then the Indiana game happened, and I just felt like they were still feeling it, like, whoa, we lost that Iowa game. But still, 2 losses in the conference. Yeah, they should have beat Iowa. They started out slow. They couldn't get anything going. They got what they got coming to them. And then in the Ohio State game, they play a great game. It gets left up to a call that's questionable. I'll leave it at that. In double overtime, they lose that game 30-27. I look at this team, and even if they don't make the college football playoff again, I don't look at it as like a, man, we didn't make the college football playoff. Will we ever? I look at it more as a, you know what? Next year will be the time. Because I look at this team and I wonder, like, after.
Such a cubby mindset.
No. After this is what I'll probably, let's say they do 2 losses again, maybe the 3. Maybe we'll go with the 2015 mindset. They lose the first game, they lose 2 in conference. Part of me would look at it and go, you know what? They missed out on an opportunity. 2016 was their year. It was their year, and the Iowa game screwed it up because it kind of messed with their momentum late in the season. But then another part of me will say, you know what? This is a team that still has guys. I mean, Spate's only a junior. He could come back for senior year. You've got Chris Evans, who's only a freshman, I believe. Ty Isaac, he's the only upperclassman with this running back situation. You've got guys to where they're going to grow into another year where who's to say 2018 is not like the 2016 team. And we're just looking at 17 as, well, that was the year they were inexperienced and youthful, and now they're reloaded, ready to take on a Ohio State. I'm looking at them, and really after this year, Braxton Miller, he's in the NFL. Cardell Jones, he's in the NFL. JT Barrett's not going to be there forever. I know that they'll have a next guy, but will that next guy be what they have had? And will that be the time Michigan can then overtake Ohio State?
So here's the thing that I want to talk about really quickly is that Wilton Spate is going to have to be the key player this year. He's going to have to be the key guy this year. And with what he did last year, over 2,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. That's great, especially with the only 7 interceptions. But even if he's able to limit that, he is I think, the right person to be the leader for this team. And he's going to have to be the leader for this team. And he's going to be able to work behind a pretty strong, solid line. That's going to be good. They're going to be able to hopefully give him time that he needs to be able to throw and find his young receivers. And I think if he's able to do that, if he's able to move the ball on third down, move the chain, move the ball down the field, limit turnovers, be effective, find his guys, manage the game well, I think that Michigan will be just fine. And when I say just fine, I mean Michigan football fine, like 10 wins again.
Yeah.
And I think that they'll be okay. I'm just saying that there's so many things that Michigan has done to this point that are right, and they still have not made the college football playoff. Like last year, you take a look at it, and through the first 7-8 games of the season, Michigan is going to the college football playoff. Is Michigan going to win the college football playoff? That was a discussion. But it's crazy how one game, one bad half,
everything.
Changes the outlook and the complexity of an entire field. And Michigan was part of that field, and then boom, they disappeared. They were no longer part of that. And if anyone was getting in from the Big Ten last year, outside of Ohio State,
it was going to be Michigan.
No. Penn State.
Really?
That's what I would have said, and that's what a lot of people would have said. Many coming from Pennsylvania, but I think that Penn State played better down the stretch than Michigan did.
You're saying with how things did play out, not like how they. Okay.
Yes, with how things did play out. I would have said Penn State.
I thought
was
you
the
were
next
saying
team.
if Michigan would have won that Iowa game and then lost to Ohio State.
The way that things did play out, I would not have. But that's what I was trying to bring it back to, where they. How something as simple as one bad game and one loss there after 8 straight wins to start the season, or whatever they ended up being to start the season, so dominant of Michigan, they're going to be the team to go to the playoff. That one game changes the complexity of everything, and boom, down the stretch, they stunk. They weren't able to, the loss against Ohio State, give it to them. The loss against Iowa, not so much.
No, and
that's why I said the next team that would have gone in if it wasn't Ohio State, would have been Penn State, because of the way that they played in the middle of the season and down the stretch. They were the strongest team in that Big Ten, I think, probably outside of Ohio State. But that's the thing, and that's why Wilton Speight has to be the leader. He has to know what's at stake. He has to know that this is fully his team now. Fully his team. And he's going to be the leader of it. And whatever he does, that's the direction they go. If he has a strong year, they go in that direction. If he suffers, they suffer. That's kind of what it is. Because I don't want to say that, they don't have any leaders on defense, but they lost so many. They lost so many.
We're going to say it again, 11.
And they need new guys to come up and be the vocal guys and be the guys who are not afraid to take charge and really win over the rest of the guys on the defensive side or on the offensive side. But Michigan is going to be in an interesting spot this season, still expecting to be good, while working with completely new talent for the most part.
Well, and I want to turn the conversation on them. And before I do, the one thing I want to say, our lads let me down. Our lads let me down with the depth chart. They had it updated to where when I said freshman, take it as a sophomore. Ty Isaac, he was a senior last year. When I said junior, take it as a senior. They didn't update the classes. So the classes just add one to it for whatever I said. But this is where you guys come in. Michigan fans, we want to hear from you. Let us know down below in the comment section, what do you guys think for this team this year? And do you think that losing the 11 starters or the 11 tacklers on defense will play a big key or a big part to this season? And what do you see from Michigan? What if you don't make the college football playoff this year? How would you view it looking forward, especially with Jim Harbaugh as the head coach? Let us know down below in the comment section. And Brandon, we're going to move on to the next team. The team that some would say, guys, why are you talking about them now? Because they won the Big Ten East. So really they should be the last ones for the podcast. But however, this one is a little bit of a loophole. Because Penn State did not make the college football playoff, they are not the last team we talk about. That is reserved for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And this is where we'll talk about the Big Ten Beast champions, the Penn State Nittany Lions. And Brandon, this is kind of a similar question for the Michigan segment, but now you won the Big Ten East last year. You return your quarterback who had record-breaking numbers and your running back who we've talked about in NFL draft discussions already. Is this Penn State team the favorite of this side of the Big Ten or even the Big Ten to rep the Big Ten in the college football playoff? Are they the favorite?
Ricky, I don't know how they couldn't be. I mean, and that's without looking at schedule or anything, but when you know that you've got your quarterback back, Trace McSorley, and you've got Saquon Barkley back, you've got your basically all what's the word?
All purpose?
All Big Ten tight end back. You've got an 82 catch receiver back.
And you're talking about Chris Godwin and Mike Grzycki, the tight end and the wide receiver. And Godwin is NFL bound. Is going to be NFL bound.
Deshaun Hamilton.
Okay.
Deshaun Hamilton.
Godwin is NFL bound.
Yes.
He's already in the NFL.
Deshaun Hamilton is who I'm talking about. But I don't see how this team, and then defensively a solid group again with who they are returning and not losing as much, especially not losing as much as what Michigan is. I don't see how this team would not come into this season and say anything less than winning the Big Ten East is a failure. I don't know how they would not come into the season and say that, because with how well they did last year and how well they picked it up in the middle of the season and just carried that momentum throughout the rest of the year, and with everyone that they're returning. And you're not just returning a starter and a starter. You're returning a stud quarterback, pair it with a stud running back.
A stud quarterback who went toe-to-toe with Sam Darnold, who's going to be a top three, if not a number one pick in the NFL draft potentially.
Absolutely. I think that McSorley, with him, it's be a little bit more accurate, be a little bit more consistent. He was awesome. He was awesome down the stretch. And I think that for anyone to think anything other than winning the conference and college football playoff, they're crazy. Because that's exactly what this team should be aiming for.
I'm going to tell you two things. This is going to be the Penn State kind of season in a nutshell. You ready for it? Number one, the offense is going to have to, I say carry this team, but I use that lightly, only because the defense, they have losses that are more significant, and we have the offense that are returning so many great pieces. And like you said, you're not just returning a starting quarterback. You're not just returning a starting running back. You're returning studs at both of those positions. So that's number one. That the offense is going to have to carry this team a little bit while the defense kind of gels and gets going late in the season. I expect this team to be on full cylinder. But also, the second point, this season for Penn State, if they want to make the college football playoff, comes down to uno game.
And we know who it is.
Uno juego. And that is Halloween weekend when they go to Columbus to play Ohio State. That game will be on Fox, and I cannot wait for it already. That is going to be the game that decides the Big Ten East, because the way I look at Penn State, yeah, I like Michigan, and I'll probably root for them against Penn State because I like Jim Harbaugh, and I would like to see Michigan in the college football playoff because I have a soft spot for what they're doing there in Ann Arbor, and because I hate Ohio State. But Penn State, I feel like, will go undefeated except for that Ohio State game. That's the game where it's like, which way is it going to go? That's going to be the only loss for them, if it is a loss this season, is that game. It's all going to come down to that game. Everything else, I'm chalking. I know that it's all they got to go and play the games, but right now, as I'm chalking it through, just chalk all W's except for that Ohio State game where I just put the question marks. I'm just going to let them play it. Not even going to put a win or a loss. I'm just going to let them play it, Brandon. Let them play it, and then they'll decide. That's how close and that's how good I expect this game to be.
Ricky, that's generous of you. That's really nice.
Yeah, you know me. I like handing out wins and losses like Oprah. You get a win, you get a loss.
No, seriously, that's exactly
usually how
are.
I am.
And you're just so loose with it.
You get a win. You get a win.
They'll beat them. They'll beat them. The loss, win. So Penn State had lost 4 meetings prior to the win that they had 24-21 against Ohio State, and I remember watching that one and being like, oh my gosh, this is happening, and it happened. And it was a great game. It was an exciting game, and it showed that, the top dog can be taken down and where their weakness was. And their offensive line, you and I could have been playing on their offensive line that night because they were so bad. They were so bad. Penn State did such a great job with penetration, and I think that kind of go with they had 40 sacks on the season. Their defense had 40 sacks on the season, which is a great number and a really strong number for the team. And that's where the defense comes into. If you can put that type of pressure on quarterbacks weekly throughout the season, How are you not going to be the favorite to be the winner of the Big Ten and then be in the college football playoff? Which I was one of those people who thought that you should have been in the college football playoff anyways. I was kind of pissed that Ohio State got in there.
I don't know. I feel like the resume for Ohio State was a little bit better.
Oh, bull. Anywho.
Plus, the thing that played, and I can't believe we're having this conversation again, the thing that did not sit right is having a team that, yes, I know it was a 3-point win, but Ohio State beat Michigan. Penn State got blown out against Michigan last year. That, to me, was also something that the committee has to look at and go,
the committee doesn't look at any of the things that we look at. They sit around and they go, let's pick up something very vague.
That one.
And we will take that team. That's what.
Do they just put the teams on the board and just throw a dart at it, you think? Except for Alabama, they take that one down and put it off to the side. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, that's how they do it. But no, but come on, is that game against Michigan that Penn State played? You would have thought it was a different season because it was night and day of how they played their first half and their middle and then their second half, and you can count it. But
happened. It happened.
But don't count it.
But it happened.
But that's at a different point. That was at such a different point in the season. They truly transformed into a new team. They did.
Wonder Twin powers activated. They won the Big Ten.
They really did. But honestly though, you have to go back and just look at how they played at the beginning of the season, and they were nowhere near the dominant team that they were at the end of it. I'm nowhere near it. And that's why I think that for you to say so easily and so quickly, say, oh, well, they lost, to Michigan, 49, they're blown out. That's why they shouldn't have gotten in.
On paper, it was a blowout.
I know that you're just giving a stat, and you're giving a fact.
A fact.
A factual stat. But, you lose to Michigan 49-10. You lose to Pitt 42-39, and they're gonna have I think a pretty good game on their hands with Pitt this year, because I think Pitt is pretty solid this year. But then after that, not another loss until they got to the Rose Bowl, and I mean and
that was a great game. That was probably game of the year, except for the national title game of the year in my mind.
I mean, Ohio State, huge win. Purdue blowout. Iowa blowout. Indiana, they beat by 14. Rutgers, blowout. Michigan State, blowout. Wisconsin, close game and good game. And Wisconsin was number 6 at the time, and they beat them 38-31. This Penn State team, they played out of their mind. And they did. They went and they were a new team.
Now,
revived team.
Let me ask you this.
And that's why I think if they take what that team was and just keep pumping it out, keep going with it for this year, this team's going to be unstoppable.
Let me ask you this, and this is something while you were talking, I just kind of thought about.
Ricky's like, while you were talking, I kind of stopped listening to you.
No, I was listening because I'm like, shit, I should ask Brandon about this. So we mentioned it before. Last year was they won the Big Ten, but they didn't make the college football playoff. Do you think this season they play like they have a chip on their shoulder, where it's basically, well, you know what? Fuck it. We're just going to win every game. Because if we win every game, you got to put us in, right? Are we going to see that kind of like FU attitude from this Penn State team where it's just like, you know what? We're just going to win every game, and we're just going to not blow them out, because I don't expect them to blow out like Ohio State or even Michigan, but that attitude where it's like, you know what? We're just going to win every game and then try to keep us out. Try to keep us out with a straight face. Are we going to see that type of an attitude from this James Franklin Penn State team?
I hope so. Because they were pissed. They were pissed when they didn't get in. But I think that if they come out and they play like they did win it, I mean, they obviously did win it, but it felt like they didn't. I think if they come out and they just play the way that they played to end the year, and the fight, I mean, they didn't win the Rose Bowl. They lost, unfortunately, in a great game, like you said. But if they come out and they play with the same type of tenacity that they did in that game, and they play with the same type of tenacity that they did at the end of the season, in the middle of the season, and against, Ohio State last year, this team is going to be fueled by everything that happened last year, be fueled by the snub that they got last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes for a dangerous team. That's a dangerous team. And then you pair that with the talent that they have on that team. I don't want to play you. That's how good that I think that they can be and will be this year. And, early part of the season looks pretty promising for them. You come out, you start off with Akron. You do not have to start out with Florida. You start out with Akron, then Pitt, then Georgia State,
and even
then
Pitt,
Iowa, then Indiana. And that's your first 5 games.
Even Pitt, too, it's not like here's Florida. I mean, yeah, Pitt beat them last year, but like you said, day and night between the team we saw at the beginning of the season and the team we saw at the end of the season.
And I think that if they do beat Pitt this year, I think that you'd be able to say they beat a quality Pitt team.
Unless is that Max Brown's coming out party, because we have still yet to see that. That could be Brown's coming out party against Penn State. Maybe that's a topic we'll talk about that week. Is the Penn State game his coming out?
And
party.
then he'll for sure fail.
He'll throw like 5 interceptions that game. But the question I want to ask you, and this will kind of bridge us over into Ohio State, is I want to ask you this. Give me the percentage. What percent are you putting at right now as we sit, I'm going to say July 14th, 13th as we record this at about 10:30 Central Time, p.m. What's the percentage you put on Penn State being in the college football playoff when we get to the end of the year?
Having to try and think of, you have 3 teams because you already lock up your spot for Alabama. I'm going to give them Penn State. I'm going to give them a 77.7% chance.
You did your calculation way different than mine. And the reason why is you were comparing them against teams of different conferences. I look at it this way. SEC will be there, ACC will be there, Big Ten will be there. The last spot, whether it's going to be either an SEC team, a second one, a Pac-12 team, Washington, or the Trojans, could be the Trojans, sorry, USC, a Pac-12 team.
Washington? What kind of frickin' answer was that? I was not a Washington.
Well, Washington, they made it last year. They're not going to make...
But look at you. You said it with confidence. Pac-12 team, Washington. Like USC doesn't exist. Sorry, USC fans. Ricky
Washington
is
was
a little tired, I think.
The best team in the Pac-12. I forgot that Sam Darnold and that team will make strides this year. Mm-hmm. So Pac-12 team, that's number 2. Or a Big 12 team, maybe.
Oklahoma. I would have also put Oklahoma in there last year too. I would have put a lot of people.
The way I looked at my percentage was score of maybe, because in my head I'm thinking if you win the Big Ten, you're going to the college football playoff. And I'm going to say, I'll say this, 30%, because I realized in my head I was thinking of something different than I asked. 30% chance to win the Big Ten. However, after that, I'd say probably if they win the Big Ten, a 50% chance to make the college football playoff. But to me, I was looking at them, if I'm looking compared to Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, I'm going to say 30% chance out of those 3 teams to make the playoff. If I'm looking just out of the Big Ten teams, 30%. 30. And that's... I'm gonna tease you guys because at the end of the Ohio State segment, I'm gonna give I'll give the percentage for obviously Ohio State because we're gonna talk about them, and then I will give my percentage for Michigan as well because they are in that little circular pie. But 30% of that pie is the Penn State and their kind of percentage to win the conference and go to the college football playoff. You're giving me a weird look, like you don't agree with me.
No, I don't.
Well, we're gonna get to that, and this is where I'm gonna toss the conversation your guys' way. Let us know
30%
down below
chance.
in the comment section. It'll all make sense at the end. It'll all make sense at the end. So go check out the full podcast. Go to the end. It'll all make sense from there. But let us know, Penn State fans, what you guys think down below for your team. Give us your chance. What is the percentage that this team makes the college football playoff in 2017? Let us know down below in the comment section. But Brandon, we are now going to end the podcast with our preview of the team that made the college football playoff last year, and that is the Ohio State Buckeyes. And Buckeye fans, welcome in if you're watching us on YouTube. And Brandon, I want to get right into it. And actually, the thing with this one that I want to look at is not the college football playoff chances, because I feel like they are fairly high for this team, and there are going to be a lot of people expecting them to make the college football playoff for a third year in a row. Won it 2 years ago, was in it last year, lost to Clemson, or 3 years ago, pardon me. So they have been in it ever since we've had the college football playoff. And this is a team, though, the big thing I look at is the guy who was calling the plays, and Tim Beck, he's at Texas. He followed Tom Herman to Texas, a former Ohio State guy. Now your signal caller is former Indiana head coach Kevin Wilson. I want to ask you this. How do you think Kevin Wilson will do as the offensive coordinator for Ohio State? Do you see this kind of as a pseudo, well, you know what? Lane Kiffin didn't work as a head coach, but as a offensive coordinator for Alabama under a solid head coach in Nick Saban, things work out. Could Ohio State fans kind of look at the same thing? Kevin Wilson got forced out of Indiana for differences in opinions on things, but underneath a solid head coach in Urban Meyer, could be a good offensive coordinator for us.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any problem. I think that Kevin Wilson will be just fine. He's staying in the same. He's staying in the same conference. He's staying in the same side of the conference. I don't think there's going to be any issue. You get to work with an experienced quarterback in J.T. Barrett. You get to work with a team that's very strong. You get to work with an offensive line that's possibly one of the best in the Big Ten, if not the best. You're going to be fine. You're going to be just fine. I don't think there's going to be any problems with him. You got some newer, younger receivers, I think, to be able to develop along. But with having J.T. Barrett, I think you're fine. You're fine, and you're not going to have too many problems.
Here's the question I have with J.T. Barrett, and I'm glad you brought him up. This is a guy over the years, it seemed like, because the first year I'm thinking, well, it was mainly Braxton Miller was the guy. Then they moved Braxton Miller to kind of that offensive weapon. And really when it came down to Barrett or Jones, there was one point, I can't remember if it was last season or the season before, where it was basically, hey, you know what? This guy should be the starter. And then he got the job taken away from Cardell Jones. I want to say it was the year they won the national title with Zeke. Do we see J.T. Barrett finally, to me, take that next step to where you look at this team, and we don't ask the question of, are they a college football playoff team, but do we go back to the question of, is this team going to be a national championship team? Can he be that guy, kind of like how Cardell Jones was that guy? Well, of course he had Zeke. Zeke had an amazing performance in the two games to win against Alabama and Oregon that year. But can he be the guy to not just make this team a college football playoff team, but like we did last year, but really take that next step like we expect him to catapult this team into, they're a national championship contender?
Well, here's the thing that I think is that, you know, it's not going to be just J.T. Barrett. It's not going to be just him. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think that there were too many people that looked when Cardell Jones was there and thought, oh, yeah, Cardell Jones, he's going to lead him. He's going to lead him to a national championship. How many people do you think really thought that?
Towards the end of the year? Like, by the time we got to that college football playoff side, especially after they beat Alabama, I mean, I was rooting for Oregon at that time, but that was a team that really
You're talking about. I'm talking about the wrong period.
When he took the job from JT Barrett,
Yes.
no one. That team was, to me, I looked at it, was like, we're seeing dysfunctional at the quarterback position, to where we can't decide who's our starter. Which one are we going to go with? Option A, option B? We're going to mix them? That's what I was looking at.
And that's why I wanted to bring that up, is because right now there is none of that. JT Barrett is the guy. He's got the reins. He's riding the horse. He's the only one riding the horse. Boom. And I think that because of that, that gives him the utmost confidence to go out and to just play as best as he possibly can and try and get as much as he can out of his offense, out of his wide receivers, out of his running backs. This guy is going to be good. But I think is going to be good this year. We already know he's good, but he's going to be good this year. And I think that the game that I'm interested the most in is the game against Oklahoma. You played Oklahoma last year, and let's be honest about it. Thank goodness for that win, because it got you into the playoff. How do they play against Oklahoma this year? Because Baker Mayfield's still there at Oklahoma. He's still good. They beat Oklahoma pretty good last year.
Here's the thing.
But this year, is that game going to be the same? Is it going to be different? Is it going to matter as much this year as it did last year?
I don't know how I feel yet about Oklahoma, and it's mainly because of two things. It's mainly option A is because before last season, we didn't see the off-the-field instances that we've seen with Baker Mayfield now, where he's been getting in trouble a little bit off the field, where we had that, he got stopped by the cops for being intoxicated, which everyone's going to go, well, he's a stupid college kid. Of course, you're going to be intoxicated. But then that idiotic film of him being like, where you can see him kind of like thinking slowly, like, I'm a pro football player. I can outrun them. And then he tries to outrun him and he gets tackled into a kind of cement wall. We see that this year of off the field issues with Baker Mayfield, who's your starting quarterback. And B, I don't know yet how to gauge the coaching change. Yeah, it's a similar situation where we talked about with Indiana, where they're just promoting a guy from within and someone who's capable of taking the job. But without Stoops there, is it going to be a different game? And especially the game back and forth we're going to get between now the coaches, now that it's not Mark Stoops against Urban Meyer. Those are the two things I look at with Stoops. Bob Stoops. I'm thinking of his brother at Kentucky. Thank you. Bob Stoops, where it's those two things are now, what am I how am I gauging Oklahoma? I'm still kind of iffy when it comes to them. However, I'm still expecting that to be a solid game. I just don't know if it's going to be as close as I once thought. But this Ohio State team, like you bring up the schedule, the only thing that Indiana could be tough, because although I said I expect them to beat Indiana, if they come out and surprise, that could be something, because that will be at Indiana. However, good thing for them, they get most of their backloaded games, Michigan State, Michigan, and Penn State after October. Last week of October is Penn State, and then the rest, the two Michigan teams, are in November. So they get them all backloaded at the back of the schedule.
They have Ohio State, if they lose any of their first 6-7 games,
they don't deserve to be in the college football playoff.
They're in big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
They're in big trouble. Not counting necessarily that Oklahoma game.
Mm-hmm.
That Oklahoma, I think, we haven't obviously looked at them, but just knowing that Baker Mayfield is back, for all the on-field stuff that he can do, you have to put them in the top of the, towards the top of that category in the Big 12. But everything else, Indiana, Army, UNLV, Rutgers, Maryland, Nebraska, if I'm Ohio State, I should be beating every single one of them. You should be. And then you get to Penn State later.
It's going to be the big one.
It's late in the season. It's late enough in the season where you lose that one, and then you've got Michigan State and Michigan after that. And 2 losses can still get you a spot.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's going to be hard.
That'd be tough.
You know how I said Penn State's season comes down to 1 game? Remember when I said, Ohio State, Penn State, that's what their season comes down to? Yeah, for Ohio State, it's a little different. They've got 2. And the reason why they've got 2 is because that team in Michigan that I talked about with Penn State, Michigan's not going to play up to play. Like, they're not going to have, how do I want to put this? The extra juice in the chamber when they play Penn State compared to when they play Ohio State because of the significance of that Michigan-Ohio State game. Those 2 teams could walk in 0 wins, and they would play like they're undefeated, college football playoff on the line between Michigan and Ohio State. So that's the one thing that you think, okay, that's a knock against Ohio State compared to Penn State for making the college football playoff. They've got 2 tough games just based on that rivalry game, and it's at Ann Arbor. I kind of feel this Ohio State team, pardon me, I kind of see them going undefeated this year. And it's going to be, of course, that Penn State game could be the only one they lose. I don't see them losing to Michigan this year. I don't see that happening because of what we talked about with Michigan and because of everything with Ohio State. They're going to be, at that point, the way I'm looking at it in my mind, and of course my mind ain't 100% correct, but what I'm seeing right now is if they win that Penn State game and they keep winning, they're just going to be carrying momentum to where they will win that Michigan game and then go on into the postseason and kind of leave it where they may in the Big Ten title game. And at that point, if they go undefeated, the college football playoff.
I've got to ask you this. I just got to come out and ask you this question. Why the fuck are you so high on this team? Why do you think
the defense.
that they can be this undefeated team that doesn't probably even deserve to be in the college football playoff because of how awful they looked last year?
It's the defense. And the main part I'm looking at on this defense is their front 7, mainly their line. That defensive line is going to be ferocious for that team, and they are going to get after quarterbacks to where I feel like the Penn State, because let's be honest, the 2 games I'm looking at is I'm comparing them to Penn State and I'm comparing them to Michigan. And I feel like in my head for Michigan, I feel like that defense is going to cause some moderate havoc for Wilton Spate. And because that Michigan defense is not going to be what it was near last season, I feel like this Ohio State offense is basically going to, at that point of the season, be able to mesh together to get the job done, get the win there. And then we have a similar situation when it comes to the Penn State. The main difference is the offense for Penn State is so much, I don't want to say better, but highly ranked. They have more studs on that offense than Michigan does. And I feel like that game, and the reason why I gave it that question mark was I feel like it is going to be Ohio State is going to be able to offensively do enough to say we can win the game. But that game is going to come down to the side of the football where it is basically the Penn State offense, the Ohio State defense, going head-to-head. Whichever one wins that side of the field wins the game. Whichever one wins. If Ohio State can make their life hell and force them into situations and keep them off the board, their offense is going to be able to do enough to win that game. But if that defense can't, that Penn State offense will score points and will do enough to outscore the offense of Ohio State.
So here's where I find the defense of Ohio State to possibly have an issue is there were teams towards the end of the year last year that were able to run a lot against this defense. And if they don't clear that up, they could find themselves in a really, really tough position. And, Clemson in the college football playoff was able to run wild all over them, over 200 yards. And Michigan State, who lost by a point, had over 200 rushing yards. And Wisconsin did a great job of playing them very, very physically. And the Ohio State won that game, but gave up plenty of yards in the process. Mm-hmm. That is something where I look and I think Ohio State, they have a good defense. They are very, very similar, I think, in the sense of Michigan, is that they lost a lot of guys to the NFL. They're quickly trying to restock these guys in these positions, these guys they lost who are really good, bring up these guys who are supposed to be really good and, have the potential to be very good. But there's not as much of a question mark with a team like a Penn State.
Well, and the thing is, and the one thing is, I do feel like if there's any question mark with Penn State, it's that defense with the things that they lost to where, like I said in that one, it's the offense to me that I think is going to have to carry them this season. The thing that's going to be Ohio State's strongest defensively is that defensive line. When you're talking about the running, it's going to be, to me, the big question. I think Wombly is the one that's going to move over from outside to inside to one of the guys that went to the NFL, and Raekwon McMillan. He's not there anymore. So to me, I feel like the linebackers are going to be the core where Greg Schiano is going to look at them and, hey, we got to stop the run. The defense the holes will be set up by the offense. It's those linebackers that need to get into those holes and make sure that the running back has nowhere to go, because I feel like this defensive line is just going to be, let's get into the backfield, let's cause havoc, because quarterbacks are going to be, that's where their bread and butter is going to be, is defensive line, penetrating that offensive line and using the ends to get around and hopefully get after the quarterback. And when it comes to the run, it's having those linebackers there to just fill in the holes. However, it's easier said than done.
You're absolutely right.
It's a lot easier said than done.
You're absolutely right. I think we're in for what's going to be probably a 3-team race at the top of that East Division.
And I'm glad you said 3-team race, because the one thing I teased at the end of the Penn State was, where's my little pie graph? And I gave a little slice, a 30% slice to Penn State to win the Big Ten. That's what we're going to say, win the Big Ten. And I'm going to fill out the rest of my pie. And I'll start with the 20% on that side with Penn State. It's Michigan. So that means if Michigan has 20% of the pie and Penn State has 30% of the pie, how much percent of the pie does Ohio State have?
50.
50% of the pie. I think this team is going to ride. I am going deep. Something for Ricky. Usually I go offense. I am going defense over offense this year. And I think even though, like I said, comes down to that Penn State-Ohio State game, I'm going to go defense over offense this year and ride the team that'll have the stronger defense compared to the team that'll have the stronger offense.
I think you're really giving too much to Ohio State. I think you're giving too much to Ohio State. I think that the percentages are much closer than what you've made them out to be. That's just my
what would you put them if you were to put
opinion.
The three? Just those three for the Big Ten title. We'll do it that simple. Because in this case, we'll say if they win the Big Ten title game, they're in the college football playoff.
I'd say Penn State 40, the other two 30.
So you're riding more of that, like you said, they're closer, but you're giving the edge to Penn State over an Ohio State.
I don't think that there's one of these teams. That's why, when it's almost like, are you kidding me? In my opinion, when you have one so far out in front of the other, is I think because of what Penn State did last year, where Michigan needs to be this year, and what Ohio State is going to continue to do, these three teams, I feel like it's going to be a jumble right up at the it's going to be like the American League Central Division, where you've got teams half a game, 1 game, 2 game, all right there, all very close to the top, and then one of them has to break away a little bit, but it's going to be a close race. That's what I see it as. It's going to be very close, right there at the top. Those three teams.
The wild card will be Michigan. And the reason why I say that is, like I said, I'm going to say it again. To me, when it comes down to Ohio State, Penn State, their matchup is the most important game when it comes to the Big Ten title game. However, if Michigan can be a wild card, beat a Penn State again, beat an Ohio State this year, then that is where things will become interesting. If Michigan sits back, well, not sits back, but if Michigan loses to both the teams, then it just comes down to, okay, who wins that head-to-head matchup? But Michigan, to me, will be the most important team for throwing that chaos into the race for these teams in the Big Ten East, because if they beat one or both of them, then it kind of creates that little, the tiebreakers for the, let's get into the conference championship game, but also it adds into the discussion for that college football playoff as well. And this is where, before we wrap it up, is there anything that we missed with Ohio State?
I don't think so.
It's where you guys come in. We're going to pull you guys into the conversation. Let us know down below, what do you think of the Ohio State Buckeyes? What do you feel, the three teams that we talked about here at the end, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, the playoff race? Let us know what you think about these teams heading into this season. It was great to finally, this is my conference. This is the one that I live for, especially being an Illinois fan and watching this conference very closely each and every year as we get into college football. And I believe we're under 50 days now, Brandon. I believe as of today of recording, we're 49 days or so away from college football action, as we are nearing the middle of the July month, and it will be August before we know it, and it'll be pigskin time. But next week we will look at the Big Ten West, look at those teams, and then we'll look at the Pac-12 and the Big 12 and to complete our college football previews. I want to thank you guys for either listening on Blog Talk Radio or watching on YouTube. But thank you guys for giving us your time, either in the morning, the evening, the afternoon, whatever time it is by you. But as always, have a good day, everybody.